You want to know how the world was made. Are you sure you want to know? The price of knowledge is high. No, it's not one that I'm going to charge you for, but the world will. In accusations, in questions at the very least, in responsibility and innocence. Are you sure you want to know? Are you sure that you want to know? Okay. Well, the world began with a whisper. The world began with a whisper, washing over the void, giving breath to what was empty, giving breath to what was empty. And soon the breath started to reach out and grab for something. And hands were made. And the hands rubbed against each other, just like this. Feeling each other for the first time. Feeling what existence felt like. And as they rubbed against each other, rubbing and rubbing and rubbing, they began to create clay. And they held the clay between each other. And they rolled it. And they molded it into the earth. And they made it perfect. They made it round and smooth. And they loved it so much that they kissed it. And they loved it so much that they squeezed it, because they didn't want anything else to ever have it, to ever feel it except for them. So they squeezed it. They squeezed it tight as they could. And they squeezed it so tight that it began to tear and crack open. And as they lost control of it, parts of the earth rose and parts of the earth fell, and valleys and canyons were created, and mountains and depths. There were sharp parts and soft parts and smooth parts and bumpy parts, and it hurt. It hurt the hands to hold. It hurt the hands to hold their own creation. And so they let go of it. They let go of it. And they started to cry. They started to cry. And then the tears hit the earth as rain. Pitter-pattering. Pitter-pattering. And it cried for generations until the depths filled with water and the peaks of the world froze over. And as the oceans formed and filled, those whispers started moving around the earth. They started to move around the earth, bringing life and bringing breath wherever they went. And the ground started to mold creatures of its own. The ground started growing and becoming trees. And the trees were jealous of the wind, of the whispers, so they started to grow leaves, so that the leaves could flutter, so that the leaves could dance just like the whispers. But then the wind got jealous of the leaves and how they fluttered so sweetly. So the wind started shaking, and hitting itself really, really fast. And as the wind shook, it said, and then feathers were created. And the feathers started to fall down. And the wind said, no, don't let them fall, don't let them fall. So the wind scooped them back and whirled them together, saying, stay with me, stay with me. And then they created the first animal. Do you know what it was? The bird. And the birds, they taught the world to speak. They taught the world to speak. The wind was so in love with its creation that the wind granted speech dominion over sound, so that spoken word would always be a little bit louder than whispers, a little bit more easily heard, so that the birds could fly free and sing their songs, and the entire world would work together to meet their needs. The trees bent their branches so that the birds could live within them. And the ground created life of its own, little worms, little tiny worms in the soil, and they would crawl up every morning just to answer to the birds so that the birds could take them in. But the seas were another matter entirely. The seas were jealous. The seas were jealous of the sky and of the earth and of how beautiful the birds were. So the sea created all manner of creatures to try and create something that was similar. They started with sweet little fish, and then they moved to dolphins, to sharks, to krakens, to serpents that no man has ever seen. Dark things. The secrets of the depths. Until finally, until finally they made whales. And the whales, they could sing like the birds. But the sea, unlike the earth for the birds, does not serve the whales. The sea serves only strength. The sea serves only strength. The sea serves only strength and power and might. Anything in the sea that has power, that is what is served, and that is what is in the most danger. And so the whales do not sing. They weep, and they mourn, and they cry out to their long-lost sisters, the birds, with the hope that maybe they could join them in the sky. And then they could sing with joy as well. They hold on to that hope. And that is why they have the strength to weep, which is perhaps the greatest strength of them all. And so that is why the whales weep and the birds sing and the wind whistles and the wind whispers and flutters and says sksksksksksksksk. And that is how the world was made.